He walked into the bank with nothing more than hope and trust. Trust that he would be treated like any other customer. But within moments, that trust shattered. To them, he wasn't a man with dreams, or even a man with dignity. He was just a problem, someone they thought didn't belong. The insults came fast, sharp, and humiliating. What no one inside that bank realized was that the man they dismissed carried more power, more influence, and more wealth than the entire branch combined. How could they not see who he truly was? And what would happen when the truth came out?
Marcus was the kind of man people rarely noticed. Quiet, hardworking, and always on time. Every morning he wore the same crisp suit, grabbed his worn-out briefcase, and headed downtown for work. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, he was just a man trying to build a future. To his neighbors, he was dependable. To his family, he was a source of pride. That morning felt no different.
The sun was warm, the streets were buzzing with the usual rush of city life, and Marcus walked into the bank like he had done countless times before. He needed to finalize a small detail, something routine, something simple.
But as he stepped through those polished glass doors, he felt something shift. Eyes glanced up, then quickly away. A whisper of judgment floated in the air, invisible yet suffocating. He couldn't place it, not yet. To him, this was just another errand. To them, it was something else entirely. The lobby seemed ordinary enough. Shining floors, the hum of counting machines, the faint scent of fresh paper. But what Marcus didn't know was that within minutes, his dignity would be tested, his patience stripped, and his very worth as a human being questioned. Because sometimes the cruelest moments come not with warning, but with a smile that hides contempt. And this day, in this bank, was about to reveal just how deeply those wounds could cut. Marcus approached the counter with his usual calm, sliding his documents across the polished surface. He had prepared everything carefully, every signature, every paper, every detail flawless. He had done this 100 times before. But the woman behind the desk didn't even look at the papers. Instead, her eyes lingered on him, scanning him up and down as if she were searching for something wrong. Her smile was thin, practiced, but her words carried a bite. "Are you sure you're in the right place?"
Marcus hesitated, caught off guard. "This is the loan department, right?" he asked politely. She nodded, but didn't reach for his documents. "Yes, but we don't usually handle cases like yours here. Maybe you should try another branch." Cases like yours. The words echoed inside him, sharp and heavy. He forced himself to stay calm. "All the information you need is right there," he said, gesturing toward the papers. Still, she didn't touch them. Instead, she leaned back, arms crossed. "I'll have to check with my manager. Wait here." Minutes ticked by. Marcus could feel the weight of eyes on him. Other employees whispering, customers glancing, some shaking their heads. The air grew thick, suffocating. He stood there, briefcase in hand, as if he were on trial for daring to exist in that space. Finally, a tall man in a sharp suit appeared, the manager. His steps were slow, deliberate, his expression unreadable. He stopped in front of Marcus, glanced at the documents, then at Marcus himself. And then came the words, sharp as a blade. "You people always waste our time."
Marcus's heart pounded. His grip tightened on the briefcase handle. The room seemed to tilt, his dignity stripped bare in front of strangers. He could hear a soft laugh from someone in line. Another voice muttered, "Figures." The manager shoved the documents back across the counter. "We don't entertain nonsense applications. Don't hold up real clients." Every muscle in Marcus's body burned with humiliation. He wanted to shout, to demand respect, to make them see him for who he really was. But the walls around him seemed to close in. If he lost control here, they'd only see the stereotype they already believed. So he gathered his papers quietly, his jaw clenched. Each step toward the door felt like dragging chains. Behind him, the whispers grew louder, feeding on his silence, feeding on his pain. But what no one in that bank knew, what not a single sneer, smirk, or insult could erase, was that Marcus carried a truth powerful enough to shatter their arrogance. Because he wasn't just another man standing in line. He wasn't a burden, a beggar, or someone desperate for approval. He was the very lifeline their bank depended on. And soon they would learn the price of underestimating him.
Marcus turned toward the door, his dignity in tatters, when a voice cut through the room. "Wait, is there a problem here?" The atmosphere shifted. The man who spoke wore a sharp gray suit, his badge gleaming. An executive, someone with authority. The employees straightened immediately, their rehearsed smiles returning, but the damage had already been done. The manager stepped forward. "No problem at all, sir. Just an unqualified applicant wasting our time." His words dripped with arrogance. Marcus froze. Every eye was on him, waiting for him to shrink, to accept the humiliation. But instead, he reached into his briefcase and placed a single envelope on the counter. Inside were documents none of them expected to see. Investment portfolios, bank contracts, and his identity as the man whose company held their largest account.
Gasps rippled through the lobby. The same people who'd whispered, who had laughed, now stared in stunned silence. The clerk's face went pale. The manager's smirk dissolved into disbelief. Marcus's voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of fire. "You called me a waste of time, yet without me, this bank wouldn't survive another year."
The silence deepened. Customers turned, phones raised, recording. The humiliation they tried to bury him under was now reflected back at them, magnified. The whispers weren't about Marcus anymore. They were about the shame of those who had judged him. For a moment, Marcus felt the full force of everything he had endured, not just today, but the years of subtle looks, dismissive comments, closed doors. It all boiled in his chest, threatening to break. But instead of anger, he let the truth hang heavy in the air, undeniable and irreversible. And then he stepped back, leaving them to choke on their silence. Because sometimes the loudest revenge isn't a shout. It's the moment the world sees who you really are.
The bank never forgot that day. Policies were rewritten, apologies were sent, and the manager who had mocked Marcus vanished quietly from the branch. But for Marcus, no apology could erase the sting of that moment, the way strangers had looked at him, the way his humanity had been dismissed before his success was even recognized.
Yes, he walked away with his dignity intact. Yes, the truth gave him power. But the scars ran deeper than paperwork or profits. Because behind every insult, every dismissive glance, was a reality far bigger than one man in a bank lobby. It was a mirror of what so many black men and women face daily. Judged before being known, diminished before being understood. Marcus's story isn't just about wealth or identity. It's about the truth that no amount of success can shield you from prejudice. That racism doesn't stop at doors of power, boardrooms, or bank counters. It lingers, silent and sharp, waiting to remind you that equality is still unfinished business. And so the question remains, how many more stories like Marcus's are happening right now, unseen and unrecorded? How many people are forced to prove their worth in a world that should have recognized their humanity from the start?
Because Marcus didn't just expose a bank, he exposed us. He exposed the uncomfortable truth that progress on paper means nothing if respect, dignity, and basic human decency aren't lived in practice. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. So, the next time you see someone being dismissed, silenced, or judged, ask yourself, will you stand silent with the crowd, or will you be the one who finally says, enough?